What's up, guys? Welcome to another video in our CSS course. Today we're going to talk about CSS positioning properties and how you can use them. By position property, I'm talking about static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. So we're going to get into those. We'll write out some code here and I'll show you how each one of those work. And I'm going to be honest, these used to be a lot bigger back in the day before more than half of web traffic was coming from mobile phones. These were used a lot more because they can position stuff exactly where you want it in CSS, but that doesn't really work when you scale down websites to like a mobile phone view because the screen sizes are so small. So a lot of these you're going to want to avoid if you can. But it's still good to know what they are because you're going to see them if you're working on older code, or there are some times when these will come in handy, maybe with a little bit if you're doing like a design that has a lot of tricky little things in there. Sometimes designers like to go crazy and make designs that are almost impossible to make with CSS, and that's where those can come in. But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the code here, and we'll mess around with some positioning so I can show you what it's all about. So I'm going to get this out of here. And I am in Visual Studio Code, and I am in my CSS course code. I recommend that you follow along with me in a text editor and write this out so you can learn, and also be making a lot of comments and stuff. You can view all of this code in the description. I have a link to the GitHub repo. You can download it from there or look at it or copy it or do whatever you want to do. But I'm going to call this lesson 14 CSS positioning .html, and we get our boilerplate code here. Make our title of our document CSS positioning, and then I'm gonna make all of my styles for this lesson are gonna go in the head underneath my title. I'm just gonna make a style tag. I'm not gonna have a separate CSS sheet for this lesson. And then I'm gonna go ahead and launch this using the live server extension on Visual Studio Code. And there's our empty little window here. So, all right, guys. So before we write any code here, I'm actually gonna copy some notes over that are gonna help you. I'm gonna paste them in here, and we'll go over them. So go ahead and follow along with me with this, and then pause the video and take these notes down and add them to your own file. That's what I recommend. But just know that the static position property is the default position, and it's not affected by top, bottom, left, or right values. Those are the values that we're going to be using to move our little elements around that we make with these different positioning. So it's top, bottom, left, and right. Just know that static is the default for all values. So if it's a block, it'll stack on top of each other. If it's a block element, if it's inline, it'll just do its normal function. It'll go inline if the positioning on it is set to static. Okay, so there's no static default, and that basically makes everything behave normally. Then there's relative. So top, bottom, left, and right values cause the element to move from its normal static position. So I'll show you that in a second. And then there's absolute, and this is on positioned relative. You want to use absolute within a container or a div that's positioned relative, because your top, bottom, left, and right values are going to go based on where that parent element is, and I'll show you what that means in a second. There's fixed, and that's exactly what it sounds like. If you use fixed on an element, it'll just stay where it is no matter if you scroll up or down. And then there's sticky, and I think sticky is a little bit newer than the other ones, but what sticky does is it's again kind of how it sounds. It'll stick something exactly where you put it, and it'll stay there. This is used for like navigation bars. When you visit websites that have nav bars that are always at the top no matter where you scroll, that's what sticky does, and I'll show you that in a second. But pause if you have to, copy this down, and just so you get like a feel of what we're about to do, and then you have a nice little chart to know what's going on. But we'll go down here and we'll make some boxes with divs like we always do. So let's go ahead and I'll give them IDs and classes so that we can select them all. So I'll say ID is going to be box1, then just a class of box. I'm going to hit tab. There we go. And we'll make like 5 of these. So I'm just going to copy these down. Okay, and then I'll change the IDs accordingly, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we're not going to see anything appear because they don't have borders or background colors or anything, so we'll change that. So let's go up to our styling now. And the first thing I'm going to do that I always do is I do a CSS reset. So I'm going to do asterisk, select everything on the page. I want margin to be 0, padding to be 0, and the box sizing to be border box. If you don't know what a CSS reset is, go check out my video on that. It's in the same playlist that you're watching now for the CSS course. I'm going to give my body, the whole body of the document, a height so that we can scroll up and down, which is going to come in handy when I show you sticky. I'm just going to make it like 4,000 pixels, so that should give you a scroll bar over here so we can scroll up and down, and you'll see why I did that in a second, but just go ahead and copy that down. And then for our boxes, we'll select them using the dot selector for our class, and we'll give them a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. And then we'll select each different box and give that a background color so that they actually show up on the page. So our first one, we'll use the hashtag box1, select our box1 ID, and that'll be a background, we'll say background color red. Okay, so there's our first box. So the boxes are there, we just couldn't see them until we had color. So copy this down, say box2 will be yellow, and then box 3 will be blue. Box 4 will be green. And box 5, we'll make that one, make it orange. Why not? Okay. Boom. So there's our boxes. And then what we'll do is I'll show you. So we'll start with like position relative. So remember, the default positioning for all these is static by default. This is just the normal behavior. So I'll show you relative on box 1. So we'll change this to position relative. Okay. And then I'm going to use the top and left values with some pixels to change its positioning on the page. So I'll say top. We'll say 50 pixels. See how that moved it down? 50 pixels from the top of the page. And we'll say left. 50 pixels, and move left 50 pixels. So that's relative, okay? And that's what it does. So I'll make it full screen and see. Moved it top 50, so 50 from the top, 50 to the left. And that was only possible because we used that, we changed the position to relative. If this was just static, the top and left wouldn't have any effect on it by default. So just to show you that, it'll go back to where it was. It'll just ignore these, which is the default for all your elements. But we'll go back to relative. And then the next one we'll do is we'll do absolute. So remember, for absolute to work like correctly, it has to be within a container that has the relative positioning so that it won't move all over the place. It'll stay within its container. So with that in mind, I'm going to make a container around box 2 and box 3. So I'm going to say we'll call it absolute container, because remember, we want to be descriptive of what our elements are doing when we use classes and IDs. So and we're just making this container to be an absolute container. So that's what we're going to name it. We'll go up here. I'm going to go up under the body, and I'll select absolute container. So I'm going to copy the name so I don't misspell anything. It's always a good thing to do is to copy your stuff over, because a typo will cause nothing to work. And then I'm going to make the container like visible, so I'm going to get it a width of 500 pixels. Oops. And a height of 500 pixels. And then we'll give it a background of like a darker and off gray, maybe like a light gray. We'll do F4. Okay, so there's our container. Give it a border of 1 pix, solid, black. Okay. And then since we're going to use absolute on our next 2 boxes, we're going to position the container itself relative. That's not going to change anything. But, well, it did. The reason, so you might have just seen this go over the relative element. That's because when you have elements relative or absolute, by default, they're like taken out of the normal flow of the page. So elements will kind of like ignore them and go over top of them. If I wanted to make this red box go back on top, I would use a property called a z index. And I would give it a property of 1 or a value of 1. And that will put it back on top. Okay. Or I could go -1. And it'll go back on the bottom. See how z-index works? So that's why that happened, just so you know. Let's leave it at 1. Let's have it be on top. So just know that z-index is a thing. All right, so now what we can do is we'll change our positioning of box 2 and 3, our yellow and blue box. So first we'll do yellow. We'll say position absolute. Okay. And again, that might have made it look like the blue box disappeared, but what happened is it's underneath the yellow box now because we just took the box out of the flow, so now it's just kind of floating around and it's over the other box. So don't be fooled by that. So we'll go position absolute, and then for this one, let's go top 100 pixels and left 100 pixels. And there's our yellow box. So we told it to go left 100 and top 100. And see, our blue box is still there the whole time. Just went over it for a second. And then let's do the same thing for the blue box. We'll say position absolute. And this time we'll say, we'll go bottom 100 pixels. Oops, I'm in the wrong window here. Bottom 100 pixels. And then we'll go right 100 pixels. And we'll see what that does when we save. So I'm going to save. And there it went. I went 100 pixels from the bottom and 100 pixels from the right. Okay? So listen. And then since it's positioned absolute, but it's relative to where its container is, it stays within its container in those positions. Okay? That's how relative and absolute work together. And that's pretty much the only thing that I really use in modern designs is relative and absolute. Sometimes I use them together to achieve stuff like this because you'll get difficult designs that have like images in weird places or overlapping, and you sometimes have to use that. It's not the best because then when it comes to making stuff mobile responsive on smaller screens, it's hard to you have to tweak it constantly for different screen sizes. But just know that that's the thing you can do: position and absolute together. What's next here? Got a couple more. So we got, fixed. So we'll make box 4 fixed, and that's our blue box. So let's go ahead and, I'm sorry, that's our green box. So we'll say position fixed on our green box. Okay. And now it's just fixed where it was. So again, it went over the orange box because we took it out of the flow of the document. But we can scroll now. We'll scroll down. See how this is why we made the body 4,000 pixels tall. See, our green box is just staying fixed in its position. So that's fixed. And the practical use for that is when you're on a website and it has that little arrow icon that you can click on and it just takes you back to the top immediately. That's where fixed is used. So that is used. Sometimes I use it when I make a back to the top button. What do we got? One more. So we got one more, and that'll be position sticky. So let's go back. And that'll be our orange box. So let's say position sticky. Okay. And then we'll say top 0. So watch what that's going to do. So again, position sticky, top 0. Now let's scroll down. And look. So we scroll down past everything, but it's still sticking to the top 0. So top 0 means all the way to the top and stay there. So that would be mimicking a navigation bar that is staying on top of the page when you scroll down. And that's position sticky. And our fixed green square is still staying here because it's fixed. Okay? So that's it, guys. That's really all you have to know for positioning on using CSS position property on different elements. Again, it's not something that you kind of want to stay away from using this as much as you can because it's a pain in the butt to make it mobile responsive, but it does work. So yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.